Don't let your retirement become a nightmare. Today I'm going to go over the 3 common mistakes almost every retiree will make in their retirement and the ways to prevent them. If you're new here, my name is Ethan Miko and I specialize in helping Washington State employees build better retirement plans. Today I'm filming outside of my car just because it's track season. We got some family conflicts going on. Also doing a lot of volunteer work, so I'm out of the office for most of the week. I'm outside here of Sundance Espresso in Seattle, Washington, is where I usually hang out when I'm not in my office. So the first mistake I see most retirees make in retirement is they don't understand how much taxes they're going to owe. Sometimes they have an idea of what they owe, but a lot of them are on this assumption that I make less money in retirement, therefore I'm going to pay less in taxes. And that is almost never true for state employees. Remember that you guys have pensions and Social Security, which is a guaranteed income stream, all of which are pre-tax. So because you have these 2 pre-tax income streams, your level of income in retirement is going to have a guaranteed rate, and it's never going to dip below that. You can't, do pre-tax savings or any kind of weird fancy strategies most times to dip your income lower once you've been in retirement. So your income's going to be fixed for the most part. And then any distributions you take from pre-tax accounts is going to be stacked on top of it. So if you're married and your income is, 94,000, anything, that's the top end of the 12% bracket, anything above that stacks 22%. So if your pension and Social Security for both of you come out to about 90,000 or so, and then you want to take another, 10, 20,000 from your Plan 3, your deferred compensation plan, now that money is going to be taxed at that next tier or at the 22% level. So a lot of people will look at their retirement, especially Plan 3 people, and they say, hey, I have, 500,000, 800,000, $1 million in that account. And they think all that money's theirs. And the truth is, that's not all theirs. It actually depends on how you take it, when you take it, and what the taxes are. That determines how much of the money you actually get to keep. So it varies from year to year. So it can vary how much of that is actually truly your money. When I see accounts like that, I typically see a 6-figure tax bill that is yet to be paid. And the longer they put off not doing anything about it, the more and more they're going to owe to the IRS. So to expand on that further, if you're looking at your retirement accounts, and if you were to say, take a large distribution, let's say you took $500,000 because you wanted to buy something fancy, or you wanted to put it all in your savings account for whatever reason, remember that $500,000 hasn't yet been taxed yet, that counts as taxable income. So you're going to have to pay tax on all that $500,000 plus whatever income you made in that given year, whether it was some salary, Social Security, pensions, whatever it was, will be taxed on top of it. Now, if you look at the tax code, depending if you're married or single, for the most part, you're going to be probably on the top end of that bracket there, or in the 37% bracket. So remember that it doesn't mean all of that money is going to be taxed 37%. Everything is tiered. It's a marginal rate system here. Just remember that anything over where it says 37% is you have to pay on that amount there. I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but if you just say it was 400,000, anything above that, you're paying 37% on. Now, if you're not over 59.5, you do this, now you got to pay 10% on top of that. So 37%, now you got to pay 10% on top of that. That's 47%. So it's half of the money that falls inside a bracket will now have to go to the IRS. Now, assuming you're in Washington, that's usually where the taxes stop. But if you move to a different state, some other states have state income taxes, and you have to pay that rate on top of it. So you could be adding another, 4 or 5% or more on top of that. So you can quickly see that depending on how you took your distribution and when you took it. So if you took it before 59, a large distribution, and you're out of state, you could quickly wipe out almost half of your money in taxes alone. And it may sound kind of common sense, like, hey, I would never do that. But I've met a lot of people that have. They just don't understand how taxes work. They think that money's theirs and they just pull it out. Or they think that buying the tax bullet is worth it because they're somehow going to have less risk by putting it into some bank account and they're okay earning 0.5%, 1%, or if they're lucky, they got a high yield one paying 5%. And it almost never is going to work out for you. When you pay such large amount of taxes that early in retirement, it's going to take a long time for that money to recover if you're only earning 5%. And remember that it's only 5% because that's where interest rates are at. If interest rates start to come down, then you're going to earn less, and it's going to take even longer to get that money back. You probably never will. So it's always important to consult with somebody before making any type of big moves that'll impact your taxes like this. Another side part to this is just beyond the tax piece of it. That's what a lot of people focus on, is when you get close to retirement, there are certain other tax codes or situations that you have to kind of watch for. I like to call them tripwires. So if you basically make a penny over a certain amount, then it impacts you in different ways. So the 2 key ones you want to watch for are Social Security and Medicare taxes. So with Social Security, the first 30 some odd thousand that you earn, is considered non-taxable. So if you only earned $20,000 in a given year, your Social Security would not be taxed. So it's just Social Security would be taxed, not your other income. That would still be taxed. Now, if you earned anything over, I think it's like 44,000 or so, then up to 85% of your Social Security benefits are now subject to tax. So that's not the tax rate. That's just how much of it you have to pay taxes on. So 50% is tax-free, 85% of whatever you earned will be then subject to taxes, and then you pay whatever rate you're in at that time, 22, 24%. So when we have pensions and large distributions for retirement accounts, we can easily go over that threshold, which means more of our Social Security will be subject to taxes. And if taxes change, that means that it will take more taxes from our Social Security, which means our Social Security check we take home will go down. So it's a very real risk that people run when they have heavy pre-tax retirement accounts, is that if taxes change, your net take-home pay is now lower in retirement. So you're still spending the same, and all that changes, taxes went up. Now you have less take-home pay. So that's a real reason why you want to have different tax buckets to draw on, so you can always plan for unexpected tax hikes in the future. The second tripwire to watch for is the Medicare premium tax. So basically, they have income thresholds out there, and if you go over these thresholds by just one penny, you're now locked into higher Medicare premium for the next 12 months for both you and your spouse. So you want to pay close attention to this, because they do have a 2-year look-back period. So if you're 63 and you guys are earning good money, you're making $200,000, $300,000 per year, that's over the threshold. So when you go to apply for Medicare 65, you may see a premium for $270 or $300, something like that. And if you don't know better, you're going to know by paying it. It's just because you earned more money at that time. If you're no longer earning that much at 65 because you're retired, there actually is a form you can fill out and say, hey, I don't earn that anymore. You show proof of income statements, and they can actually lower that Medicare premium back to the initial, the common rate basically, which is like 174 or something like that. In retirement though, if you were to take a large distribution and you go over the threshold, then you're going to have to pay bump back up again into one of those higher rates, and you're locked in there for another 12 months. And this can easily cost you a couple $100, per month per person. And, that's a lot of money that you would have to end up paying. And then now it's not a tax, but it's still a separate expense that got triggered because you took a large distribution from this current retirement. All right, so that's basically mistake number one. Mistake number two that I see a lot has to do with healthcare. Healthcare is really, really expensive just in general for people, especially in retirement, when you typically have more healthcare needs. So I just read the other day that of all the bankruptcies in America, 2/3 of them are due to medical bills. We're not being able to pay medical debt. So that's a huge concern and something that you need to be prepared for. Yes, Medicare is there to help pay for some stuff. And if you have, PEB, that can help too. A lot of people will try to use a cheaper plan. They go to AARP because they want the cheapest option out there. And you've probably experienced it before. Usually you get what you pay for. The cheapest insurance isn't going to be the one that pays the best. You're going to have to deal with, more phone calls, and it's just going to be a bigger hassle. So in my experience, working with state employees for the last 10 years, on the PEP system, they go with the Regis Blue Shield plan. And typically it is one of the more pricey ones out there, but they don't mess around. I've had clients go, double hip replacements, knee replacements, got airlifted, and they pretty much paid for all of it. So expensive premium-wise, but when they needed them, they were there to pay for pretty much all of the expenses, and they had nothing come out of pocket. So healthcare is a real risk, and you want to make sure you have adequate savings in place for that. So not just the premiums, but anything they don't cover. So common they don't cover is long-term care. So anytime you need someone to come to your home or you have to go to some type of facility, Medicare ain't going to pay that, PEB ain't going to pay that. That's coming out of your pocket. Or you can, if you want to go the insurance route, that's something to look at too. I always just advise people to have some type of plan. I don't like it when I see people say, that's never going to happen to me, or my family's going to take care of me. Those two things typically never work out. The whole never going to happen to me is we don't know. Currently, about 70% of people are expected to need some type of long-term care, and that's huge. Everyone has car insurance and home insurance, but the odds you need home insurance is like 7%. The odds you actually need your car insurance is like 18%. This is 4 times higher than that. And you're going to tell me that it's not going to happen to you? That you probably, in some form, you're going to need some type of help. Even if it's someone to come and help you cook your meals because you can't stand up long enough to chop food or something. At some point, we're just going to get too old to really do stuff, and we're going to need some help. Family is a great option. I know a lot of people use that. What I think about it, if depending on the type of need, for silly little things, sure. But if it's like, hey, I need you to, give me a bath or take me to the bathroom in the morning, that's a big ask. And if your family's not living with you, they live far away, they have families and jobs, that's a lot to ask for them. And this is long-term care. It's not like a one-night thing, right? This could be, several months, several years, in fact. And I don't want to be in the position where I have to rely on my daughters for that type of help. That just loses dignity. And I'm like, there's trained professionals for a reason that specialize in this that could give me better care. And then my daughters could, be with their families and not have to worry about it. So that's why I actually purchased my own long-term care at the age of 30. So the premiums are low because I'm young. It's going to be paid off well before I'm retired. So I won't have that bill retirement. And it's just a peace of mind thing knowing that if or when this were to happen, I have that coverage in place to pay for a professional to come and give me the care that I need. And worst case, I never need it. My family then gets a 6-figure check that's completely tax-free to spend however they want. So in my view, it's a win-win. Now, it's not the same for everybody. If you're in your 50s or 60s, of course, it's going to be a lot more expensive, and it may not be the right thing for you. The fortunate thing for you is long-term care insurance isn't something like you need to have per se. It's an option you should look at, but there's also long-term care annuities. And what I've been reading up on a lot of is just using something like reverse mortgages, which is basically just like a line of credit on your homes, to help pay for these costs. So instead of paying $1,000 for premiums and then having to, submit receipts and get reimbursed for stuff, you basically just get a checkbook that you can write checks to whoever provider you need. It comes off your home equity to help pay for these things. So I'll go more on reverse mortgage later, but it is a pretty viable strategy that's starting to come up in the financial planning community as ways to pay for long-term care without having to go through the whole insurance world and jump through all those hoops. So the third mistake I see retirees make is improper risk management. I'm not talking about investments at all here. When I talk about risk management, I really mean insurance coverages or just estate plan. Things that could happen to us that are out of our control that can derail our retirement or just cause complete havoc in our lives. This actually happens in multiple forms. So one is on your estate plan. If you don't have a will, power of attorney, healthcare records, that's something you really, really need to have in place to make sure that if or when something happens to you, people know who to call, what your wishes are, where the money's going to go. It needs to all be in writing. You don't want to not have one because if it goes to probate, it's going to take a long time and it's expensive and it's just a hassle for your loved ones. They would have to go through that all. So make sure you at least have some kind of a will or estate plan in place. Second part of that is making sure your beneficiaries are updated and they are the right type. So a common thing that we see is people will have a beneficiary, it could be their spouse or kids, and they forget to update over time. So that's a pretty easy fix. But one thing that's not on most beneficiary boxes when you're filling out these forms for retirement accounts is underneath the primary beneficiary or even contingent beneficiaries, most times you should see is another box that says per capita or per stipes. And what those terms means is what happens if my beneficiary predeceased me and I forgot to change it. So by default, if you don't see those boxes, never check them, it's per capita. That's the industry standard. So per capita means that if my primary beneficiary were to predecease me, my other primary beneficiary would inherit all of their money. So for example, if I had 2 kids and one of them passed away, the surviving kid would get 100% of it. And for most people, they're like, oh, that's probably what I would want. But it gets so complicated if your 2 kids also had, gave you grandkids and you lost your kid. Now the surviving child of yours gets all the money. You basically disinherited your grandkids. So the money that was supposed to go to their parent who passed away now goes to the surviving parent and they get nothing. Now, if you remember this or know this ahead of time, you can always make changes and put your grandkids as contingent beneficiaries or beneficiaries, things like that. But a lot of people don't think that far ahead. They forget to change all of the accounts. They might just change 1 or 2 of them. So it's just kind of heads up of, that's kind of the industry default. So if you don't want that, if you want to make sure that your grandkids or that side of the family, tree always has that money coming to them, you want to make sure you check the per stipes box. So per stipes means it just stays on that side of the family tree. So if my child were to pass away, the next in line would be their kids, would then split that side of the money. Now, last part of improper risk management, and the one that I always like to focus on a lot when I first meet a client, is the personal liability protection. So a lot of people I find are running kind of lower policy limits on their home and auto insurance, and they really should have. They try to, get something that's kind of middle of the road, like okay-ish, like it might pay for some stuff. It sounds good. Yeah, it's like the $300,000 level. The premiums are okay, and they kind of just go with that. Or I see on the other side where people have, they're worth a lot of money, but They are just so picky, and they have like the minimum coverage, or they don't have any coverage. I've seen that too. They have absolutely no liability coverage. And the thing that my friend told me is, remember that in America, you don't have to be a millionaire to be sued like one. And it doesn't take much to lose everything in this country. So if you have 100, 300,000 and you get in an accident, and if you were, if the person were to die or they can't go back to work, now you have to pay for loss of income. After they're 55, and if they only made, 50,000 a year, the court's going to, decide that loss of income for 10 years, if they really couldn't go back to work, if you're 50,000 for 10 years, that's $500,000. Your insurance isn't going to pay 300 at most. Now you're on the hook for the other 200,000. That's just loss of income. You still have to figure in if they had pension benefits or medical benefits, retirement contributions, pain and suffering. All those get added onto it, so you can quickly reach, close to that 7-figure mark, and just something like that if that were to happen. So it's important to have the proper insurance coverages in place to protect your assets, because yes, your assets are always on the table and can be subject for garnishment in a lawsuit should something like that come up. So always make sure you have liability coverage that exceeds how much assets you have. You want them to take the insurance company's money, not yours. So a way to do this is you always increase your limits, but in Washington, limits stop at $500,000. So what do you do if you have a multi-million-dollar retirement account where your home's worth a lot of money and you only have $500,000 protection on your home or your car? The next thing to do is to get yourself an umbrella policy. So umbrella policy, they sell them in usually $1 million blankets, and they protect your car and your home. It is basically a second layer. So it's one policy that protects both. That's why they call it the umbrella. So you buy $1 million increments. They don't cost too much money, and that's kind of a cheap and easier way to get that other layer of protection that before they start going after, your home or your other assets. All right. So I hope that was helpful for everyone, and that you now know the mistakes and what you need to be doing to avoid them. I've been doing this for about 10 years now. If you guys need help and want me to kind of hold your hands or walk you through all different processes and things that you should be watching for, feel free to book a call with me. And until next time, remember that your future depends on what you do today.